Donald Trump has officially imposed 50% tariffs on imports from India starting August 27, 2025. So will this cause massive unemployment, GDP contraction, and business losses in India? So which sectors are impacted the most? What is India doing to counter this move? And also, how US is impacted? Is this another Mr. Trump's negotiation tactics, or this time is it to stay? So let's break it bit by bit and get these answers. So the numbers are in fact scary. In 2024, India exported over $80 billion worth of goods to the US, and the tariffs are expected to affect almost $49 billion worth of exports. This means almost 1.2% of the Indian GDP is at stake almost overnight. So although 1.2% does not sound scary, but let me tell you, in a $4 trillion Indian economy, that equates to millions of jobs and business losses overnight. But not all the sectors are under 50% tariff though. So medicines, electronics including smartphones and iPhones which are assembled in India, natural gas, crude oil, and all those critical minerals are exempt from the 50% tariffs. Even the IT and the BPO services are exempt from this tariff. So the sectors impacted are textiles, gems and jewelries, garments, carpets, and the footwears. So this is not just about the products, it is about the people. Millions of Indian workers in micro, small and medium enterprises in these manufacturing clusters like Surat and Tirupura will be impacted. The Federation of Indian Export Organizations estimates that these exporters will face a 30 to 35% cost disadvantage compared to competitor countries with lower tariffs like Bangladesh, Nepal, Vietnam, and Cambodia. Even if the tariffs are taken back later, the competitors might have already locked in the US market share. But to put that in perspective, imagine a Vietnam exported t-shirt in Walmart in US for $10. That same t-shirt from India will now cost $14. Of course, that will have major cost disadvantage for the Indian products. So as of 2025, the US is our largest export destination. So let us have a look of the first few steps India has taken to raise this impact of the 50% tariffs. So the first is, of course, the diversification to key new markets to sell our products. So the Indian government has announced a diversification outreach program to 40 key new markets, including the UK, Japan, and South Korea. So to put that in perspective, the plan is to outreach 40 select new markets, including UK, Japan, South Korea, Germany, France, and Australia, together which import more than $590 billion of textiles every year. So that's a big market to tap into for Indian textiles. The plan is to involve the export promotion councils in India, the EPCs, to create marketing plans to identify high demand goods in these target countries and also connect the manufacturing clusters in India like Surat, Panipat, Tirupura and Badaui to these target countries. Of course, the seriousness and the effectiveness of this plan is yet to be seen. So my point is, why not have specialized deals with these nations like we had with the UK-India Free Trade Agreement in July? That will help to tap into these markets with the Indian goods more effectively. In fact, all this tariff situations and everything that is happening around it can act as a blessing in disguise for India, and India can rise out of its reliance on the US as its only major export destination. So even there are some tax breaks and reliefs for these micro and small businesses. The government actually aims to free up cash with these businesses so that it can be used for investments and consumptions. So some people also say that India is cautiously getting closer to China, and that will also help India. But if you ask me, and as per experts, China cannot fill in the lost US markets for India because India imports more than it exports to China. So definitely we do not have the market of the goods like textiles, leathers, footwears in China. We need to look out for target destinations for our goods other than China. But yes, of course, this strengthened relationship with China will give geopolitical leverage to India on the global stage and will help us by raising India's bargaining power with the West. But again, do you think that India can trust China? So let's also flip the coin and see how and what exactly the masterstroke from Mr. Trump is impacting the USA. So of course, the first logical impact would be the prices of textiles, gems and jewelries, or all those products which are imported from Indian exporters, they getting pricier or costlier in the US. But we need to understand that America will not run out of cheap t-shirts and jewelries just because India is out of the game. So the US has other options, be it Nepal, Bangladesh, Cambodia, and even China can step in. But here's the catch: with one big supplier now gone, the US is left with fewer choices of suppliers, and fewer choices means lesser bargaining power. For example, if you are a Vietnam textile exporter and you know that India is out of the game for your American business to whom you export the textiles, then you know that you have an option to negotiate now. You have some ground to negotiate your deal with the American business. You as the Vietnam exporter can also raise your prices. So the problem with the US will not be about shortages. It will be about US giving away its leverage. The State Bank of India even estimates that the US inflation could stay above 2% well into 2026. But here's the million-dollar question: are these tariffs even here to stay? Because if history tells us anything, Mr. Trump loves to use tariffs as a negotiation tool. He raises the heat, creates a panic, and then offer a deal if the other side bends. This is his art of negotiating a deal. So India might yet strike a bargain, maybe on the defense purchases, maybe on oil imports, that might convince Mr. Trump to roll back on things. But even if Mr. Trump doesn't blink, the US courts might. So interestingly, a federal appeals court in the US has ruled out that most of Mr. Trump's reciprocal tariffs were an illegal overreach of his emergency powers. Now, the tariffs are not gone yet, and this matter will now go to the Supreme Court in the US, and hence it will stay in place at least till October. But this makes one thing very clearly, that Mr. Trump's tariff wall doesn't rest on a solid legal ground beneath it. So before we panic about a permanent trade war, let's be clear that a lot still depends on whether these tariffs will survive negotiations and will survive legal battles in court in the USA. See, in the end, I would also say that a lot depends on how India takes it. Does it only focus on strengthening its relationship with China, or India also looks out for other new markets? It should be treated as a wake-up call for India. Does India get satisfied being called a Vishwaguru, or it has the answers to what happens tomorrow if US imposes massive tariffs on our exports, or what happens if US technology companies like Google, Microsoft, WhatsApp ban India? We can ban TikTok, but do we have an answer to TikTok? Do we have homegrown applications, homegrown AI technology products that can actually impact and have penetration into the world market? So at first glance, this looks like a disaster for India, but step back and it might be the kick that India needed. A push to reduce over-reliance on the US market, faster reforms in manufacturing, infrastructure and trade, stronger ties with Europe, Asia and Africa, and a wake-up call to innovate and move up the value chain. We in fact need more investments in the AI, stop the brain drain. The next decade will be ruled by countries having the best technology. So yes, Trump's tariffs sting, but they also force India to play the longer game, to stop depending too much on one market and instead become a truly global player. Thank you. If you gained something from this video, please like, subscribe and comment. Thank you.